leave 45 minutes at the end for questions and answers, so don't worry, we're going to get to all of your questions towards the end after we get through everything. So, all right, Dr. Goldstien.
Thank you. Hi everybody, my name is Bonni Goldstien and I'm a trained pediatrician. I trained at Children's LA and my specialty was pediatric emergency medicine for many years. I did that for about 13 years. And as you can imagine, also being a mom, I was terribly burned out and I started, I took some time off of work and a friend of mine had cancer and asked me about cannabis, and just like 99% of doctors out there, I was completely uninformed, and this was back in, I want to say 2007-ish. But I had some time off and I'm a science geek and I decided to research for my friend, and I couldn't believe once I started looking at research what I found. And that doctors were ignoring this and that it wasn't even up for discussion for most doctors. So I went back into medicine in a cannabis office in Long Beach, and I fell in love with the practice. And I was taking care of adults, and I have to tell you, after 15 years of pediatrics, I was like, God, I hope I don't hurt anybody, because I don't know adult medicine, but I had a crash course. And what was amazing was everybody was getting great results, and everybody was well, and they were getting off the dangerous pills, and they're coming back. And the biggest thing, if I can tell you, is about after 4 months of taking care of patients, it's almost as if they all have the same script, and I knew they weren't meeting in the parking lot saying, let's go tell her this so she gives us our cannabis letter. They were all sleeping better, they had less anxiety, less depression, getting off pills. They were saying things like, I'm more functional at work, I'm a better spouse, I'm a better parent, I'm a better grandmother, I'm not going to the doctor as often, I wake up feeling like I can take on the day. And remember, this is back when really there was no CBD, this was just THC. And it was eye-opening for me. And after 3 to 4 months, and I wrote a book a few years ago, and in my, the preface to the book I write, I didn't look back. I had found what I wanted to do. I decided that I didn't want to write prescriptions anymore, I didn't want to harm anybody. And I was, even though my heart has always been taking care of children, I decided at that point I would be fine taking care of adults. In 2013, after the Sanjay Gupta CNN documentary, and if you haven't seen it, you should go online and watch it. It's available on YouTube. It's called Weed. The little story about Charlotte Figge. I started getting phone calls. Do you guys take? And nobody knew me. They just said, they called and said, will you take pediatrics? So my secretaries called me and said, there's a 13-year-old child has seizures. Will you take care of her? I said, sure. I've taken care of those kids before. Let's see if I can help them. And I learned as much as I could. I reached out to Ray, and he initially turned me down. He said, you can't come to the Stanley Brothers thing. I said, I'm not advertising. I'll be a fly on the wall. I just want to absorb whatever information so that I can help my patients. And that's when I met Ray. And we've been fast friends ever since, because we're on the same team, and that team is to take care of sick kids. I still can't believe in our country that there's states where you can't get this. I find it absolutely fascinating. So anyway, I have 6 slides, and then if anybody else is talking after me, and then I'll hang around to answer questions. So if you haven't heard of autism, I suspect you all have. I actually think the prevalence is more than 1 in 160. In my practice right now, I'm only taking children, and by the way, I used to have a long waiting list, and because of legalization, many of the adults that have it already dialed in are not coming back for their letter. They're very happy to go get their small amount of cannabis that they need without getting a doctor's letter. So it's been able for me to expand my practice bigger with children, so I don't have a waiting list anymore. It's a few months, but it's not, like at one point I had a year waiting list. But now it seems that autism is kind of overtaking epilepsy as the most common condition I'm seeing in pediatrics. And of course, kids with dual diagnosis, because we know that autism runs with other conditions, including anxiety is a very big one that I hear from families, ADHD, and so on. And I always tell people, all of these kids, you can check the little diagnosis box, but they all have their own little twist. They're all individuals, and that's how we have to treat them. Main features we know: communication difficulties, repetitive behavior, social challenges, oftentimes more than that. But really interesting is neuroinflammation and neuroimmune abnormalities. This is a brand new article that came out, and if you just go on Google Scholar, I hope you all know about Google Scholar, you can get free articles. If you put in Siniscalco 2018 and autism, or cannabinoid, or just neuroinflammation, you should be able to find that article. And then also there's an article from 25 issues are 4 times more prevalent, okay? If we look at the endocannabinoid system, okay, where are your receptors? You have these receptors called cannabinoid receptors that Dr. Lee mentioned. Where are the 3 places they're most concentrated? Brain, gut, immune system. Okay, so it's clear cut that the endocannabinoid system is playing some role in the manifestation of autism. Right now we only have 2 FDA drugs approved. They're both terrible, Resperdal, and then the other one is, I never say it right, so I'll call it by its drug name, Abilify. These are atypical, or they're antipsychotics, and children with autism are not psychotic. And you have to remember, these are not really treating autism, not treating root cause, they're treating, can I just calm my kid down so he doesn't rip the house up or beat himself up, okay? There's significant side effects. I got this little picture from a website that shows there's been over billions of dollars settling lawsuits with Resperdal because in boys especially it causes what we call gynecomastia, breast growth. There are children who have had to have mastectomies from the side effects. One of the things that I'm seeing in my practice is parents coming in saying, you know, they're following my child's hormone levels and now the hormone levels are getting out of control and they're telling me I have to wean off this and I don't have anything else, and that's why it is kind of pushing people to seek other treatments. If we look at the literature review, there's not a lot of research that shows that cannabis, of course, because cannabis is, quote, illegal to research, it's still a Schedule 1, including CBD, it is still a Schedule 1. But there are a few articles. So back in 2010, they gave a 6-year-old boy a drug called dronabinol, and if you're not familiar with it, it is a synthetic THC. It is a Schedule 3 drug that a doctor can write a prescription for. It's like Marinol that we give to cancer patients for nausea and vomiting. And what they did with this little boy is, it's just a case report to see if it would help him. And he had all kinds of issues, you know, hyperactivity, irritability, lethargy, he had a lot of stimming and inappropriate speech. And what was interesting is that they used the parents' assessment, the researchers' assessment, and then they got a third party who they all assessed him at the beginning, halfway through, and then again at the end. And all of them, if you look at the graph in the article, everything was improved, and it was very low dose. And this is basically a substitute for THC. It's not whole plant, it's single molecule, but look at this low dose actually helped improve, okay? And I'm going to tell you why that worked, okay? There have been studies looking at genetic mutations linking autism and endocannabinoid deficiency deficit. Also, alterations in endocannabinoid system in mice resulted in autistic type behavior. And then anandamide is our brain's cannabis. It's our brain's THC. It's called an endocannabinoid is the umbrella term. And we have 5 different endocannabinoids. We make cannabis-like compounds. We have 5 that we make. There's a suspicion that we actually make 13 of them, but there's 5 that will interact with the cannabinoid receptors. That's why we have the receptors. We don't have the receptors for the plant. So what they did in this study is that they gave mice anandamide. They gave mice the compound, the endocannabinoid that they make, and it increased activity at these receptors, which improved some social impairment that they saw. Now, again, when we have mice studies, it gives hints, but really what we want is human studies, and these are the 2 big human studies, and this is why I feel very comfortable treating children with autism. I did anyway, but this helps back me up when I'm talking to people who are naysayers. And the first study was done again by Siniscalco back in 2013. And what they did, now remember I told you the 3 places where these receptors are dense on our cell walls: the brain, the gut, and the immune system. What's part of your immune system? Your white blood cells, right? You can draw blood and they can stain for the receptors on the white blood cells, okay? Now if you smoke a lot of THC or you take a lot of edibles and it's THC heavy, your receptors go down. Your body says this is too much, and the receptors that are sitting on the cell walls hide inside the cell. This is what we call tolerance. Ever known anybody who smokes a lot of pot? All of a sudden they're like, my husband has a friend who seems like, I couldn't tell if he's high or not. He smokes all the time according to his wife. You can't tell He's not silly, he's not hungry or whatever. That's just his kind of baseline. But what's happened in his brain is his cannabinoid receptors have all migrated inside the cell. They're no longer available for THC to bind on. Okay, so our receptors can go up or down depending on what's going on in the body. So what they found, which is so fascinating, is that children with autism, which is right here, okay, look at how many receptors more than the control children, okay? And by the way, I thought it was interesting that control children were a lot of the researchers' children that they do well. But also you'll notice the CD1 is down. FA is an enzyme that breaks down anandamide, that's down, and also this is the compounds that actually make your endocannabinoid, those are down. So there's clearly something wrong going on inside the endocannabinoid system when you compare a child with autism to a child who's neurotypical. We think that the receptors are starting to come out more because they're seeking more cannabis-like compounds. So I use the analogy, if a child gets lost in the woods, are you going to send one person or are you going to send 50 people? You're going to send 50 people out to find that one molecule floating around, right? So here we are in 2013. We have a hint that there's endocannabinoid dysfunction. And remember, if you haven't read or heard about the endocannabinoid system, let me just rewind for 1 minute here. The endocannabinoid system, its job, its function, the reason we have it, is to tell the brain cells to send the right messages, to regulate the messages. And if you think about a person with anxiety, a child with autism or epilepsy, what's happening is their brain is over-firing, what we call neuroexcitation. It's too much message. And normally what's supposed to happen is your endocannabinoid system recognizes too much message, kicks out your endocannabinoid, your anandamide. It's kind of like going back to the cell and saying, hey, dial it down. Now we don't feel that happening. If you ate a Snickers bar and your sugar in your bloodstream goes up, your pancreas kicks out insulin to bring your sugar down. We don't feel that, okay? That's just supposed to happen. But what happens if your pancreas doesn't work? Your sugar stays high and you get diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And then what do you have to take?
Insulin.
Shots of insulin from an outside source because your body is not making the chemical to regulate your sugar. And it's a very similar analogy. What's fascinating is just this year out of Stanford University, where you know they're not very smart there, they were able to figure out a way to measure blood levels of what we call anandamide, your endocannabinoid, in children with autism and children who did not have autism. And what's fascinating about this is that the children with autism, their plasma anandamide, like if you measured someone's insulin level who didn't make insulin, it would be down in the toilet, right? Children with autism, their level of anandamide was so low that the researchers could actually pick out the kids with autism based on the blood test.
Wow.
Without looking at the kids. And right now, as far as I know, autism is a clinical diagnosis. You look at the child, test the child, you see what the child is doing. So this may very well turn out to be a test that will be a marker. This is huge, okay, to be able, and so we suspect something at a year of age, maybe the baby's not making milestones. Maybe this is part of the workup. Why wouldn't we do it?
Right.
And then you can intervene earlier, so you don't have to wait till your child has years of endocannabinoid dysfunction before saying, oh gee, let me see if there's an indication for cannabis. So this is really, really very significant research. And what most closely mimics anandamide in your brain? THC. Anandamide sticks to the receptor, THC sticks to the receptor. CBD does not activate the receptor. It alters the way the receptor works. It modulates the receptor. So, for instance, if I took 5 milligrams of THC, I might feel high. But if I took 5 milligrams of THC along with 100 milligrams of CBD, I'm not going to feel that THC. Why? Because the CBD is altering the way the THC is working at my receptor. Okay, doesn't mean it's stopping it, it's just changing the way it works. And there's a term for that, it's called an allosteric modulator. I had to go back and relearn what that meant, because as a clinician for 20 some odd years, who remembers that? So I went back into the chemistry and relearned that, but that's basically one of the reasons why children with autism need some THC in the mix, because they're missing this. They're missing their brain's THC, and if you don't put it in there. And what you have to remember is that if you are low, so I in general do not prescribe insulin, but I would never prescribe it to somebody who didn't need it, right? So one of the biggest challenges that I find as a clinician is when parents come in, many of them are still stuck in the reefer madness. THC is bad, CBD is good. There is no bad cannabinoid. If your brain is missing this, you need to have some, because you can't expect CBD to do all the heavy lifting. This is why some children, as Dr. Lee was talking about, some kids are on a 20-to-1 ratio, some kids are on an 8-to-1 ratio. If you look at this, they don't have no anandamide. It's a scale. It's a spectrum of how much anandamide, right? And so they haven't correlated yet, because again, this is brand new. There is no correlation of, do the kids who have really, really low levels of anandamide, are they more severe in their symptoms? We don't know that yet. That would be something that we should really look at to see, because if I knew somebody had such severe symptoms, I mean, of course, we always have to start somewhere with cannabis. There's a whole, as you know, if you go to the expo, you're gonna see there's a bazillion products out there now. It's like, where do I begin, right? In my practice, I always want something that has THC in it. Yesterday, for instance, I had a family that came in brand new. They had a bottle of CBD isolate, which means that there's nothing else in there. Really, it's just CBD. Gave it, mom says there's no difference, even big doses, little doses. This is a child who needs THC, and of course the answer is, oh my gosh, is he gonna get high? Is it gonna affect his development? This is a child who's running around with low anandamide. We need to replace that. The goal is not to sedate, tranquilize, or get your child intoxicated. The goal is to get your child to find that balance. And as Dr. Lee said, it takes some, it's trial and error. I don't like to use experimentation because that word gets us in trouble. Trial and error, but that's what the drugs are too. I mean, if somebody, and everybody's shaking their heads, ask Ray, how many drugs did they try for your child, right? For epilepsy. I mean, it is, they start off kind of knowing, oh, it's this kind of epilepsy, we're going to give this kind of drug, but then they usually end up trying the gamut of them. So this is really key here, and this is free online. If you go online and just type in plasma anandamide and autism, you will, and then on Google Scholar, but I have found you have to click on, there's a little thing for dates, click on 2018, since 2018, and this will pop up as number 1, all right? And then this is kind of my approach. One size does not fit all, okay? I have kids in my practice who take 50 milligrams of THC to go to school in the morning. If I took 50 milligrams of THC, I would not get up for a week. So remember, different brains do different things on cannabis. We all know that, okay? And I think it's really interesting. Dr. Meshulam in Israel, who was the one who kind of discovered THC, he did an experiment back in the 60s where he made cannabis brownies, and he invited all his friends over, and he gave them all the same dose because he wanted to see how they all reacted. And so one was happy, one said, I don't feel it, one was hiding behind the couch paranoid, one fell asleep, one, was dancing. I mean, people react differently. We all have different brains, and all of us have, our endocannabinoid system is actually coded by our genetics. 2 days ago, I had a family in my office who was there with a 13-year-old boy with autism. They've done intensive therapy, 30, 40 hours a week, since he was about 1.5 years of age. And in general, the kid does pretty well. But he's still not speaking, and now he's hitting puberty, and he's starting to just have a few more issues, and they're willing to try this. But what's interesting is I always ask about other conditions in the family that may reflect what we call an endocannabinoid deficiency genetically. Well, guess what else is running in the family? The mom has irritable bowel syndrome. We know that's an endocannabinoid deficiency. The grandmother has fibromyalgia. The aunt has migraines. And then, there's somebody with bipolar and somebody else with whatever. These are all endocannabinoid deficiency type illnesses. They're all people who, there's some evidence in the literature to show that their brain, for whatever reason, doesn't make their endocannabinoids. Now, one thing I'm just going to share too is that you have to have certain enzymes to take healthy fat to make your endocannabinoids, okay? What have we been told for the last 30 years not to eat? Fat. What's kind of coming back into ketogenic diet and fat. So hopefully we're not going to see the kind of spectrum of disease that we see, but I really think part of it was the whole low-fat craze you know, really meant to protect our heart, and it turns out that actually fat is fine, sugar is not so fine, right? So anyway, going back to this, I do find that the combination of cannabinoids seems to be advantageous for a lot of patients, but we don't start there. I can't put you on a bunch of stuff, because then if it doesn't work, or if it does work, I don't know what's working. So it's one thing at a time. I often tell people it may take you anywhere from 3 months to a year or even longer to figure out which cannabinoids might work, and I know you can attest to that, trying different things. And then every time you turn around, something new is on the market, so it's something new to try. I find with CBD, and part of this comes from a study in Israel. There's a clinical trial right now in Israel where actually the government helps them do research as opposed to blocking them from doing research. They're doing a trial with a 20-to-1 ratio plant CBD dominant oil in children with autism, and they started low dose, and over time they're raising doses, and they found that higher doses can be very helpful. In Israel, the cost of CBD is capped, meaning there's a certain price and they won't charge you, they're not allowed to charge you more. Here in the United States, of course, in California, sometimes 300 milligrams a day or 400 milligrams a day to give your child very good results, as you know, can probably cost $20 a day or more. And for some people, that's just not sustainable for the long run. And so that's one of the reasons sometimes I use other cannabinoids, because some families just cannot afford to give their child more than 25 or 50 milligrams a day. But the highest I've ever had anybody on, actually I even have higher than this since this slide. I've got a boy right now who came to me at age 15, terribly aggressive. He's in full-blown puberty, so even the dad described sexual rage, and nonverbal, and just kind of a mess. He'd been on multiple drugs. Still, we're weaning him off drugs right now. He was actually the dad had 2 pages worth of products that they had tried. This dad had given it a good chance with just about everything out there, but he never tried high-dose CBD, so the boy was already on like 75 milligrams a day of THC, and I just don't think it was doing anything anymore. I think he was tolerant to it. So right out of the gate, part of this, I don't do this in kids who are cannabis naive. We start low and titrate up. But for this child, since he had been on cannabis, I just started him at 300 milligrams, 100 milligrams 3 times a day. And within 2 days, his aggression completely resolved. He was like sleeping all night. In fact, I gave a talk up in Portland, and I asked the dad to send me a picture so I could tell his story, and the picture he sent was of his son sleeping. Because the dad said, I haven't slept in 15 years. And so here's a picture of him sleeping, because he sleeps at 8 to 10 hours a night, and it's been life-changing. So it wasn't the picture I expected, but sure enough, that's it. So anyway, so he's actually been able to wean down on the THC. He's been able to stay steady on CBD. CBD does not cause tolerance. The tolerance comes from the direct activation of those receptors, and remember, CBD doesn't do that. THC does that. So oftentimes, if you find your dose of CBD, you may have to fluctuate a little to control for symptoms, but often you don't really have to change it very often. Okay, you can find that dose and stay there. For many people, there are some people that come in and they don't trust me, and they want to start low dose, and I say, when your child bounces around the room worse than he already is, or she already is, give me a call, because we'll go up. CBD in low doses is known as an alerting or stimulating molecule. CBD in high doses is actually more calming and relaxing and sedating. So starting at a low dose, and I know I've talked about this with Rhonda, is that sometimes you want to start at 5 or 10 milligrams, and not everybody, but some kids actually get worse. I get parents that say, you should have seen what he did today. Rip the house apart, kick the dog. This is not okay. And then I say go up, and people are like, what do you mean go up? We should be going down. No. CBD is what we call biphasic, so it has 2 phases. Lower doses, alerting, higher doses, more sedating. THC is biphasic. Think about this. Low dose is anti-anxiety. If you take too much, what happens? Anxiety and paranoia, right? So 2 phases. So you have to, and the cutoff is very difficult to find. Rhonda and I talked about 50 milligrams. It seems like somewhere in there. Sometimes now I just start kids at 25 milligrams and give the parents, if it's making your child bounce around, go ahead and just go up right away. Don't wait for an effect, okay? THC THCA seems to work. If you don't know what THCA is, it is the raw form of THC. So if I had a cannabis plant here and I cut the flower off of it and tested it, it's THCA. A stands for acid. This is if you notice, like kind of handed down to us through the centuries, is what do you do to cannabis to get high? You have to heat it up, right? You always have to smoke it or bake it or activate it that way. Raw cannabis was thought for a long time to not do anything, but it turns out that for some patients it is magical for them. Remember, if it's whole plant in that bottle, do I know for sure that it's THCA doing the trick? No, I don't know, because there's always a little THC in there, and also there's all the other cannabinoids and all the other terpenes. But when somebody says to me THC is working, that's fine, or THCA is working, that's what's in the bottle. It's the dominant compound in there, but I open to the idea that there may be something else in that bottle that's doing it, because according to the research, THCA does not penetrate the blood-brain barrier. Now the question becomes, is do children with autism who have neuroinflammation have a leaky blood-brain barrier? I talked to a veterinarian who told me that there's two species of dogs, or breeds. I think Australian, what are those Australian herder dogs?
Cattle dog.
Yeah, and then some other dog that have been found to have an increased risk of epilepsy, and those dogs have leaky blood-brain barriers. Very interesting, right? So research remains, we still need more research on THCA. The problem with THCA is it's what we call an unstable molecule. It likes to change to THC if it's left out. So you want it in an amber bottle or a dark, and keep it in the refrigerator. As Dr. Meshulam in Israel says, it's very hard to study THCA because you may start with something that's 99.9% THCA, and if you don't do the experiment right away, some of it's changing to THC, and if you see an effect, you don't know what it's coming from, even if you isolate THCA. There are some people who have talked to me, people who are in the chemistry business, who talk about that they have a stabilized THCA that won't change. I don't know if I believe them, but we'll see. You know, it again remains to be seen. THC, again, 1 to 50 milligrams per day. Oftentimes for kids with autism, I tell people it could be 1 time a day, 2 time a day, 3 time a day dosing. There's one little boy I take care of. The parents will tell me that they see the medicine wearing off every 4 hours. He gets kind of a lower dose spread out throughout the day. He's homeschooled, so they're able to do that, and then he just kind of stays steady. For some patients, it's difficult if the kid goes to school for 7 or 8 hours. You get a few nice hours in the beginning, and then you might see the crashing at the end where they need another dose. CBG is CBG, and if you haven't heard of that, it's cannabigerol. It is a compound that we have known about. It's antidepressant, anti-anxiety, analgesic, anti-inflammatory. CBG comes from a compound called CBGA, which is the parent compound to all the cannabinoids. So this particular compound has a lot of medicinal properties, very similar to CBD that has a very wide range of medicinal properties. Fairly new survey from Whole Plant Access for Autism showed that a lot of patients were getting better speech, and I've heard that from families, that, and even from the first dose. Decrease in stimming, decreased hyperactivity, improvement in social interaction, better sleep. I don't know, chime in, anything else. It's not for everybody. It seems to be a little more stimulating, so it can be, but in low doses it does seem to work. And this is why you have to give cannabis at least a year almost, because you got to try all this stuff and see what matches your child's chemistry, right? Dosing anywhere from 1 to 3 times a day, beneficial effects here, and then adverse effects. And by the way, all of these adverse effects can be controlled with adjustment in the dosing, the strain, the timing. Cannabis is extremely flexible. Rhonda doesn't ask me for help anymore because she knows what she's doing, and she's just doing it. You really can't harm your child with this. If you don't like what you see, don't give another dose, wait a day or 2, or just adjust the dosing. And sometimes you may need some help to know to go up or to go down, and that's what Ray does, that's what Rhonda does, Rhonda's group, and that's what I do. But really, to me, a cannabis should be first line for children with autism. You should not have to experiment with 5 other antipsychotics and put your child at risk for adverse side effects, which can be permanent, by the way. Abilify can cause a permanent tic or tremor disorder. I mean, this is how this is approved for children. I have no idea. So I think that's it. All right, so That's it, thank you.
I'm using cannabidiol for TD, for tardive dyskinesia.
Yeah.
So,
And I've had patients do very well on both THC and.
Dr. Goldstien, one more question.
Oh, sure.
Well, here comes the magic question. Now you only see patients up to the age of 18, correct?
For now, yeah.
Who do I go to see? Anybody?
Right.
Oh.
Bill can get you started, and then if I expand the practice, we can get you there. There is a really nice
From
doctor.
Charlotte's Web, right?
Yeah, from Charlotte's Web. There's
Okay,
also
I
a
just don't
doctor,
know
if
any.
anybody's
Hopefully.
interested, there's a doctor in Santa Monica by the name of Dr. Sherry Yafai. The last name is Y-A-F-A-I. She came and shadowed me in my office. She's lovely. She's actually an ER doctor. You know her? Oh yeah, she's excellent. She's an ER doctor at St. John's in Santa Monica, and she's opened up a side practice in cannabis. She also runs a rehab called High Sobriety. That is a rehab that offers cannabis as a treatment for addiction. And so, Yafai, Y-A-F-A-I, and her company is called the Relief Institute, and relief is spelled cute, R-E-L-E-A-F. Relief, okay? And she's excellent, she's compassionate, kind, wonderful. I'm so thankful that she came along. And she wants to see adults, she's adult trained, and I'm pediatric trained, so, anyway, thank you.
And there'll be more questions at the end, so if you guys got more questions, we're gonna leave that for you guys to ask any of our speakers, what questions you guys need to ask. So we'll get started with the whole plant portion of today, and we're gonna just go over some of the strategies some of our families use to make cannabis effective for them, long term. I've been doing it for a couple years, James been doing it for a couple years, Sandy's maybe about a year or so with Sandy. So we've been, there's some things that you can kind of do to make it work a little bit better if you start to see it not work as well.
That didn't go very well.
I don't know what happened, so sorry.
Oh, no worries. I was like, people talking back there. So autism spectrum disorder, I think we all know what that is. Most of us here are families. I wasn't sure if we're going to have a lot of other people in here, but it's just a spectrum of all types of issues that are going on. Anxiety, Tourette's, OCD, all this can be combined with autism. There's a lot happening with our kids. Large spectrum, we have kids that are very high functioning, that can go to school, can get a job, but maybe they have anxiety, maybe they they don't understand the social cues like other people do. Those are more of like the Asperger's type kids, the level 1 type children, all the way down to the severe kids that are extremely aggressive, maybe nonverbal, self-injurious, maybe aggressive towards others, and those maybe they can't go out in society as much, they can't really function. So it's just a huge range of children that we deal with that are considered having autism. Dr. Goldstien, we talked about this already. Endocannabinoid system, receptors found throughout the body, brain, as Dr. Goldstien mentioned, immune system, various organs, so it's throughout the body. And again, as Dr. Goldstien mentioned, CBD does not bind to some of these receptors. The CB1, the CB2 receptors that a lot of people talk about with cannabis. It binds, but it binds in an allosteric modulating type of way. So, but it doesn't activate them like THC does. So CBD does a little bit of different things. It binds to different receptors. It is one of 113 cannabinoids found in the plant. And I put this website in here, projectcbd.org. I encourage you guys, if you're looking into cannabis, to go to that website. It's an amazing resource. This article right here, how CBD works, goes through some of the receptors that CBD does bind to and what are the effects that has on the body. So it's a great article to read. CBD has a wide range of benefits, and recently CBD was approved by the FDA, a drug called Epidiolex. And even though that's not my favorite drug out there, it's kind of we're hoping that it leads to more research with CBD and more clinical trials, which is what we need. We need to have data. We need to see that this works. We need to have research from scientists that we can show to our doctors and our school teachers and our people in our life to show them that we're not crazy. This is really an amazing thing, and we just need to have the data and the science, people on board with that. So we're hoping that that's what that does. So some of the strategies for success, we'll go through all of these in the next few slides. Tracking. Dr. Lee talked about this. This is extremely important. You need to know what the oil you're using, the cannabinoids you're trying out. You need to know what it's doing, and then tracking everything on paper. If you're a paper person, we do have these at the back of your paper handouts. I did include those for you guys if you want to use those. Make copies of them, print them out, put them in a binder if you want. Track the behaviors, track the strains you're using, track the cannabinoids, the terpenes if you have that information, the times that you're dosing. All that stuff is important to track, because if you don't know what's working, if you're going to use something, you're like, oh, I don't know. Like, if you track it over time, maybe you see that there's some improvements for your child. Maybe you just need to see that data over some time. So we have that available for you. If you don't like paper, there are also apps coming out that we can use. Loose Leaf Technologies, she's a lady in San Diego who has a child with epilepsy. She's developing an app that you can download. Right now it's in the testing phase, that you can track behaviors and seizures and the medications that you're using. It's all on your phone. So that's an amazing app coming out. And then there's also another app that I like as well called Becca. Becca is an app you put on your phone, and it can track as well the behaviors. You can track the medications being used, and you can have your doctors can access that if you want to give your doctors access. Teachers can access that and provide feedback.
What did you say it was called?
Becca. And we have a flyer back there, and I'm going to show a video here.
Did you know 90% of
This is a video about Becca.
We rarely have insight into why we act or feel the way we do, particularly for those who have complex communication needs or otherwise have difficulty communicating and articulating. Becca is a data tracking tool to help us gain a better understanding and new insight into how the environment, our overall health, and everyday experiences can affect or influence behavior. We've broken the tool down into 3 distinct areas of observation: behavior, environment, and health. Start by entering the behavior you're observing at different points throughout the day. All data points in the drop-down menus can be customized specific to the person whose behavior you are tracking. Behaviors can be categorized as either desirable or challenging. Our recommendation is to limit behaviors to 4 at a time, as this is looking at overall incidents. Next, note any changes in the individual's environment. Real-time weather and environmental data is generated automatically based on the individual's location. You can also enter data throughout the day related to
Different
diet,
supplements here,
sleep, and overall
indica, THC, CBD, customized
Over
for whatever
time,
you're
we can
using.
begin to see visual patterns emerge of how
So I really
environment
like this
and health
graph.
factors may be affecting
Shows you
overall
over
well-being,
time.
sensibility, and behavior. This helps us understand how to avoid situations which cause unwanted behavior, or at the very least, prepare for them. All data inputs can be customized.
So I don't want to go over the whole video. If you want to see the rest of that, go to their website, becca.com. The developer is a friend of mine. He's given me a code for 30-day free trial. If you guys want to try that, I do have the code. Come see me at the booth afterwards. And you can try it out if you want to use an app. Some people are better with apps. Some people would rather do paper. It's totally up to you. But really, tracking is so important to see what works for your kid. Getting feedback from others. I found this very helpful for myself. You don't have to tell them what you're doing. When I first started, I went to my daughter's teachers and her therapist, and I just told them, hey, I'm trying something new. I'm changing her diet. I'm adding in a different vegetable. And can you help me with the feedback? Could you just tell me what you see? Give me more detailed notes. And they were all willing to do that. And they didn't ask me, well, what did you change? I don't think they're allowed to, really. So it was great. I just told them, hey, just tell me what you see and give me detailed notes. And then I combined that with what I was seeing, and it really helped paint a picture of what was working and what wasn't. So over time, you get to see, you're not with your kid 24 hours a day, so having them at home, they may be great, but at school, they may be a terror, and you need to know what cannabis is doing for your kid at different places, different locations, with different family, different friends. So getting the feedback from other people, I think, was really key to helping us understand what worked for our kids. And then talking to your doctor about possible interactions with other medications. So there are also interactions with CBD that can happen in your body. And so it does change the level of some of the drugs that we take on a daily basis. So this was a study done with CBD and anti-epileptic drugs. A lot of our kids deal with seizures, and so they're on these drugs all the time. And you see that right here is where the drug level should be at 0%. Basically, that's the change in the medication level in their blood. And then as they took CBD, the line started to shift, either up or down. So it does make a change in the amount of medications that are available to these kids. So it's important to kind of note, that this can happen. If you're on a lot of these drugs, what you can do is go and get a blood test, and before and after, and kind of see where the change in the medication is, and then work with your doctor to adjust the medication as needed. Or there are other tricks you can do. You can try and dose it apart from the medications. So giving about a 2-hour window between the pharmaceuticals and the cannabis can help give it enough time to be metabolized through their body, so you don't see that there's going to be a change in medication. So, if you're on a lot of medications, blood test, if you want to talk to your doctor about it and they're on board, this is a great way to monitor it. But if you cannot do that, at least try and dose it apart as best you can from your other pharmaceuticals, if there's not a change in the blood level. And then for a drug that we were just looking at in our group, we've noticed that a lot of our kids are on risperidone. Dr. Goldstien talked about a little bit. And we surveyed a group recently, and this is just new data that we've found. Kids that were using THC and they were on risperidone, they were seeing positive effects. It was working really well. The THC was helping their child, and they were able to wean off risperidone, no issues. Those using CBD with risperidone were not seeing great effects. About 20% of them were finding success, and then about 80% were not. They just weren't finding the success with just a high CBD product. So,
But also you have to look at, make sure, because maybe the child wouldn't respond to CBD if they weren't on risperidone either.
right,
So
right.
I think this goes to say that THC should be in the mix.
Oh yeah. So CBD only, adding THC, like we feel that that's whole plant is the best way to go. But definitely, there can be interactions. What this interaction is, we're not 100% sure of that, but we are seeing this pattern in our group that if your child is on a risperidone dose and they're just using a high CBD product without any THC, it just wasn't working as well for them. So playing with different cannabinoids, using what you got at hand, that can be something that you have to do if you're on these other medications. Genetic testing. Some of our families do this. It's not mandatory, but I think it's interesting to talk about. If you go to 23andMe or Ancestry DNA, you can get your genetic testing done for a low price. $99 for the 23andMe, I think $69 for Ancestry DNA. You can request the raw data, and you can run it through some of these other programs to kind of give you a report about what's happening with the DNA in your system, in their child system. And if you want a cannabis-specific report, you can take your raw DNA and upload it to Endocannabis Health. They're a new company that just came out. I had my DNA run through there. It was interesting. It showed me that I can't take a lot of THC, which I kind of already knew because I can't take a lot of THC. So it kind of just, for me, it just kind of backed up what I already knew about my trial and error process. I knew what was working for myself, and then I did this Endocannabis Health, and it kind of collaborated with what I already knew, which was that I just can't dose high with THC for myself. So it was interesting to do. This is my personal DNA that I put up here. I ran through Prometheus.com. I have a higher risk for autism, which does not surprise me. I had some things going on with autism there. Some enzyme issues here with metabolizing other drugs. So it was interesting for me. Now I am a scientist, so I can kind of go through the data and kind of look at it and kind of understand it. If you aren't a scientist, we do have doctors in our network that can go through some of these reports and help you understand what this means for you or for your child. And genetics are, it's not, you have this one gene and, that is what it is. There's a lot of things going on in your body with genetics. It just gives you an overall, like, this is a probability of happening. You have a higher chance of this happening. It's not like this is it and, it doesn't function at all. So you gotta take that into account with genetics. So you don't read this and be like, oh, I have autism. It's not what I read. It's just there's a higher probability that I would have had autism. That's all it means to me. So cannabis holidays. This is what I first thought of when I heard the term cannabis holidays. I was like, what is that? Is that 420? Like on April 20th? Is that Santa taking a smoke off a joint? Like, I don't know what that is. So I was a little confused, but I did know from doing cannabis a little bit that, what some of my families talk about are reboots. And they're kind of being the same thing. When your receptors aren't responding well anymore, you've been taking THC for a while, your receptors are going back into the cell, you might want to take a break. Give it a break a little bit. Stop taking the cannabis for a few days. And some of our families do that. They take a 48-hour break and they build it into their schedule. Either they build it in on a weekend or a holiday, summer break, anything like that. And they just give their kid, 48-hour, no cannabis break. That's usually enough time for their receptors to come back out and they're now available to be used again to do what they're supposed to do. Now, not everyone does that. I will say there are families in our group that say the reboots do nothing for them, didn't help, didn't hurt, did nothing. There are families in our group that say they have to reboot every month. There are some that say they have to reboot, at least every 6 months. So you'll get to see the pattern with your child. You get to see that you may need to reboot every 3 weeks, or you may need to reboot, once a year. As you see the cannabis working and it's no longer working as well, the efficacy is no longer there, maybe they're starting to plateau or they're starting to regress, a reboot is something to consider to try and give them, the receptors, a chance to come back. So, what I also suggest to families is, if it's not working as well, have a couple different brands on hand that work. If that's possible. Some people cannot find a couple different brands. Some people want to use one, and that's fine. My daughter is very flexible. She can use various brands, and she doesn't seem to be as adversely affected by that. So we have, just different oils that we go to. When I start to see one not working as well, I'll switch it to another oil. And her response just comes right back. So for us, that is key. We do that all the time. So for us, when we go through CBD oils, we look at a few things. Price per milligram, because we have to use a lot, it's making it cost effective is important for our families. If you don't know how to calculate price per milligram, if you go to our website, we do have a calculator on there. You can type in the milligrams in the bottle of the CBD or THC, type in the cost, and it'll calculate that for you. We had so many families that didn't know how to do it, so we just put a calculator up there for you guys. Concentrated oils, because again, we have to use a lot. We don't want to give them, a tablespoon or 20 mils of an oil. They often have issues with texture and taste. So getting it down into a small concentrated amount is, believe, the best thing for our kids. So we recommend oils that are about 15, 20 milligrams and higher. The higher the better. 50 milligrams per mil, 100 milligrams per mil if you can find an oil like that. That means you give them less to make it work. And that, for some of our kids, they can't take a large volume. Again, sensory issues. And if you need help with figuring out the concentration of an oil, that's also on our website. Organic, at least if they say they're organic, you can't really be certified organic in this industry, but we do look for oils that at least say that they are organic. Take it with a grain of salt. Third party tested. It needs to be tested oils. You need to have tested products. Potency, terpenes, the mold bacteria, it needs to be fully tested, because you do not want to make your kid worse. Like, that's the one thing we don't want to do, is make our kid more sick. So finding clean, tested products is key. Where is it grown? Is it hemp or is it not? I like to tell parents, stay away from isolate if you can. because they do need the THC for the most part. Isolate has no THC. And then, you know, if you want to go to, again, Project CBD, they have a great website on here about how to look for CBD oils. And it goes through some of the same things I just went through, and a few more steps too. It's a great website. Please check that out. Typical dosing of CBD for autism. This is just within our group. This is just the data that we've collected with the group of families that we work with. So many of our families, you know, are below 50 milligrams, about half. But there are quite a few that go up. And you should not be afraid, as Dr. Goldstien mentioned, to go up in dose. 200 milligrams, 300 milligrams. I know one mom who called me the other day, she's on 800 milligrams of CBD a day. Her kid's doing well. It's what works for their child. So they can afford that. God bless them. I know I can't. But, you know, it's priorities, you know. So one thing we get, same thing with Dr. Goldstien, we get families that come to us and they are afraid to go more than a few drops. They're afraid to go above 5 milligrams. They're afraid to give them too much. And we always tell them, oftentimes more is better. You don't want to give them that low dose and see them running around and hitting the walls and getting worse. Lower doses, we've seen it time and time again, it tends to make them worse. So we always tell parents, you know, don't be afraid to go higher with a dose. Don't be afraid to experiment with this. It's not going to hurt your kid. It's a safe medication.
Can I say something about
course.
that? So in the trials of Epidiolex, they gave children up to 50 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, sometimes over 1,000 milligrams a day, with really no negative side effects. They saw some drug interactions because those kids were on some seizure drugs, but in general, the worst thing you'll see is sedation. So I always kind of joke around, your kid could get a hold of the bottle and drink the whole thing, nothing bad will happen.
And that's happened in our group before. That has happened. And we just tell them, you know, let the kids sleep.
Wait it out, yeah.
Let them
Just
sleep.
wait it out, it'll go away, it wears off.
Yeah,
Same thing with THC, it wears off, they won't stop breathing.
Yeah. So it's a safe medication. It's really, I think that's the worst, one of the things that drives us nuts the most is that, you know, they're just scared to go higher. And really, you shouldn't be scared with this. It's not going to hurt your kid. So also, using other cannabinoids. So CBD is great. We're all here for CBD, the CBD Expo. But for autism, we really need to employ other cannabinoids as well. They all work together. They all work in synergy. They all make it more effective. So, you know, these are the cannabinoids that we tend to talk about a lot in our group. THC, CBD, THCA, the raw form, as Dr. Goldstien mentioned. CBDA is also great. CBN, that's known for sleep. And then CBG. So we have companies that make all of these cannabinoids in high forms or concentrated amounts. And we work with them and we try and get our families access to as much as they can get to. Some of our families that we work with are in illegal states and can't get access to some of these products. And that's a shame, but you know, that is the way of the world right now. But you guys are in California, hopefully. And so you guys have access to all of these. And you guys are in the best place to really get this to work. So feel free to experiment with all of them. I think Dr. Goldstien went over some of her dosing ranges that she's seen. From our data, most of our families are using a mixture of these products. Only about a third of our families are using CBD only. Some are using THC only. Some are using both. And then some are using CBD and other cannabinoids. Some are using THC and other cannabinoids. So it's not a one size fits all. You're not going to find that one product is going to be, you know, for everyone with autism. It's going to be varying per kid, per issues, per symptoms, per whatever's going on with that child. So don't be afraid of THC. This is some of the dosing that we've seen in our group with THC. Most of them are on the low end, and this is level 1, so these are the more high functioning children. As you get to the more severe kids, you do see this start to shift a little bit towards the higher end. They tend to need a little bit more THC as the more severe kids.
Okay, how are we gonna take our medicine? So We're going to talk a little bit about routes of administration. How are you going to give your medicine to your child? The first one being oils, tinctures, and sublingual. This is probably one of the most popular. You buy tinctures, oil, you can give it under the tongue. I think Dr. Bao was talking about putting it in a Ritz cracker. However you need to give it to your child. Generally speaking, with oils, it takes about an hour, maybe 2 hours to take effect and can last anywhere from 3 to 4, 5, maybe 6 hours. It's really going to depend on the child's metabolism. We also have topicals and salves. Topicals and salves are great if you have localized pain, maybe your child has eczema. As far as using them to treat behaviors, it's not really recommended. It's not going to penetrate enough to really, give your child the effect it needs to help calm them down and things like that. For other things, like I said, eczema, those things work really well. Edibles and capsules, I'm going to kind of break that up into two separate categories. I think when we talk about edibles, we think about, going to the dispensary and getting gummy bears or brownies or whatever it is. And I think a lot of us start with edibles. It's easy, our kids see a gummy bear and they'll take it, and we want to give them the medicine that way. However, with edibles, edibles can be very tough to get accurate results. A lot of our kids are pretty strain sensitive, terpene sensitive, and when you're dealing with edibles, a lot of times they can vary from batch to batch. You're not really sure what strain they're using, what's in the edible, and then also dosing can be inconsistent as well. You can buy an edible, it could say it's got 10 milligrams of THC in there, but really, unless they're testing each individual edible, are we 100% accurate? So those are a little bit more difficult. Capsules are great. We use capsules for my son. You can use them to either put oil in or you can put plant matter in. They are not necessarily recommended as a PRN, so like is in an emergency, they do take a little bit longer to take effect. Edibles can take anywhere from, I guess you could say 2 to 4 hours. I mean, I've seen my son take a little bit longer time if his metabolism is a lot slower, but the effects of the capsule last longer. So I've seen, like for my son, he'll take a capsule, it can last anywhere from 6 to 8 hours. So those are extremely effective for our kids as well. Anything you want to add so far? No?
Nope, you're doing good.
Okay. And then last we have vaping and inhalation or hot boxing is actually an extremely effective method for our children. A lot of our kids come in here, they're extremely aggressive. We talk about SIBs, self-injurious behavior. They want to be aggressive towards others. And vaping is a way to get an instant reaction. If you can get your children to vape or maybe hotbox them, it's a quick way to get medicine into their system and help them get the relief that they need. We have kids of many ages, I would say from 5, 6
and up, yeah.
Using vaping, and it can be life-saving to them in a time that they need it. So really, really great way to administer medicine when needed. And I think we're going to show a quick video.
This is a friend of ours. This is a friend in our group. This is Mark Zartler.
This is Mark, yeah.
What you're watching right now is Mark Zartler committing a crime
He's in Texas. That's why it's a crime.
that helps his daughter, who cannot help herself. 17 years ago, Christy Zartler gave birth to twin girls.
Keely, her twin, came home first, and then 3 days later, Kara followed her.
And they began the difficult years-long task of learning how to treat Kara's cerebral palsy and severe autism.
This is an antipsychotic.
There are antipsychotics and enzymes and sleep aids, but few things helped fight off the worst of her symptoms. That could sometimes go on for hours.
Pretty much on a daily basis, we have some sort of episode.
When it's heating up, I turn off the fan. Have a level 1/8 of a teaspoon.
When Mark found the one thing that could stop his daughter, he made this video to show the world. It takes 6 deep breaths
video is the truth, right? That's typical of what we see.
A neighbor first suggested years ago that cannabis could ease Kara's symptoms. Mark then found that by grinding marijuana buds and heating them to 410 degrees Fahrenheit, it created an immediate rescue response to his daughter's most violent behavior.
And by 10, she's usually back out here enjoying.
I always cry when I sorry. So, sorry. As you can see, vaping works for our families. Let me pull myself together. Okay, so we'll move on to the next. Growing and making your own medicine. So for those of you, obviously, that are in a legal state and are able to do this, it is a way to get specific medicine to your child. A lot of our kids are terpene or strain specific, and sometimes purchasing an oil, something pre-made, it can be very difficult to get that specific terpene or strain or whatever your child needs in a store or a dispensary, and so this would be an option for you if you are legally able to do so. I think what would be the most important thing to stress here is testing. It's very, very important that you make sure that the medicine that you are giving your child is tested and clean. We don't have any solvents or anything left over. So if this was something that you chose to do, which is very possible and simple, would be to get your medicine tested.
And there are plenty of labs in California that will work with patients, and they give discounted rates, and it makes it affordable for many families.
Okay, so and then we also passed out some cards. I think some of you got them. If not, they're on the back table. But these are just some of the oils that you can make: THC, THCA, CBD, CBDA, and it's just a little bit of information here to kind of help guide you in how to make those things if that is something that you need to do for yourself. And again, just making sure that you're testing your product at the end of the day. How to contact us. So we have a booth outside. I don't know if any of you, I've seen a couple of you guys come and visit us, so make sure you stop by and say hello. We do also have a website, WPA4A.org. You can join us there. We do offer one-on-one consults too if you guys need help. You can email us directly at info@WPA4A.org. And then also we're on social media, Instagram. We have a Twitter account, but I don't think we're ever on there.
We don't know how to use it.
And then Facebook. We do have a public Facebook page, and then we also have a private support group, which is where we help most of our families. So if you want more information, you can join us on the public Facebook page, and we can kind of direct you to where you need to go from there. I think that's it.
Go on.
Oh, yes. We need your help. So did you learn something today? Do you want to support us? So we are a non-profit, which means that you can make a donation and it's tax deductible. So we are volunteers, you know, but we do take donations. They help us, you know, do things like this, educate our families, go to expos, talk to people, talk to doctors, just get the word out in general. We also have some merchandise, thank you.
You're welcome.
We sell shirts, and we do have some here with us today if you guys want to buy some shirts. We also sell Bonni Goldstien's wonderful book, if you guys would like to.
It's a great book. Amazing.
Wonderful book. It was actually the first book that I read before I started giving my son cannabis, changed our lives, and also gave me confidence to kind of walk out into this realm. We're also on Amazon Smile, so I don't know if you guys shop on Amazon. I can't imagine anybody does. But Amazon Smile, which is actually a separate site from regular Amazon, you can choose an organization to donate to. And if you use them, and you can choose us as your charity, and we do get a portion of those profits.
And it's listed under WPA4A Inc. That's our full legal name.
Yes, and then spread the word. So tell your friends about us, families, if you know people, maybe have children on the spectrum or special needs. That is probably how we have grown as much as we have and been able to get the word out, is just through word of mouth. So, ready?
Mm-hmm.
Your turn.
Thanks, Annie. So I want to thank, this is the end of our presentation, but we do have questions and answers if you guys want to stick around and talk to and ask questions. I think we have well, like 5 minutes, but we can get, we have this room for an extra hour. He said we can go to 1 o'clock if we want. So special thank you to Dr. Goldstien and Canada Centers. Thank you so much for coming out here. We really appreciate you. Dr. Bowley, he flew all the way down from Berkeley for us, and we are so appreciative of what you do. Ray, of course, he's amazing and helps us almost daily. These are their websites. Please check them out. Give them lots of love. Our growing team, admin team on Facebook, we have that support group. We have about 9 admins. We're all volunteer. We are doing this day in and day out. We help families. We love doing it. We love helping. But please be kind to us. We're volunteers. All of the families in that group, you guys, I mean, you're the reason why we do what we do. We see your stories. We cry with you. We smile with you. We laugh with you. And it's just a family in there. It's amazing. So thank you for all of those people that are in that group. A lot of them are here today. Thank you guys for coming out. And of course our husbands at home who are watching our kids so that we can be here today. We can't do this without them, so I just wanted to give them a shout out as well. And that's pretty much the end of our presentation. I hope you guys learned something. Again, we're here to answer your questions. Please ask away whatever you guys need help with. I know Dr. Bao was already kind of dealing with some of the questions earlier. But feel free, we're here. If you can't get to us today, go to our websites. We can help you through there as well. And we're all in this together. We all have children with special needs, and we know what you guys are going through, and we want to help get you to where you guys can find success with this. So thank you again for coming out, everybody.
And I want to thank Rhonda for setting this entire thing up. Rhonda is the one who got us into the expo here. She got a hold of our wonderful other speakers over there, and she made the slides, and she's just amazing as usual, as always. And just want to make sure that this is all her. So
but I couldn't have done this if Jenny wasn't holding down the fort in the Facebook group.
That is true. Go, Jenny.
And taking control in there. Yeah. So, and Sandy as well. She's one of our new additions. And she's been amazing helping us in there and helping families. So thank you guys. So anyone have questions? We have a few minutes.